Hello, and welcome back to season 1 of Outside the Vacuum Climbing Podcast, brought to you by Climb Strong. This is the podcast where we step out of the training vacuum and look at climbing, coaching, and training in the real world. I'm your host, Carter Smith, and today I am so excited to be joined by two of our coaches here at Climb Strong, Klein and Sara McFadden. Now that we have a little bit of a rhythm of season 1, I just wanted to give a quick reminder for those of you who are just tuning in. Most episodes will break down as follows. First, we catch up. We discuss a little bit of current events. We nerd out about something. We talk a little bit about non-climbing media, and then we answer a training question of the week. Future Carter here. We just finished recording, and we realized that we had a little bit of technical difficulties, so the audio is going to be a little bit more edited than normal. And then we also had some issues with Sara's video feed, but everything else should be kind of back on track for any future clips. How are things? We'll just pretend we haven't been talking for 15 minutes.
Yeah. Well, things on my end, things are okay. I do feel so. I did the exact opposite of what you did, Carter, after Ticino, which was rest. I did not rest, mainly because I had this scheduling conflict out in mid-January, and I was psyched. I was psyched to start training for my next trip, and I just jumped the gun and should have rested more. And, it's a classic case of if I would have just taken a week or two off, then I'd be golden right now. And here I am, February 20th, still dealing with my mistake, or maybe not a mistake, but I just rushed into it too quickly, and I'm paying the price. With that said, in the last week, I feel like I've maybe turned the corner a little bit to the point where I can now squeeze my hand, which is huge. So, it has been a challenge in the sense that the reason why I stayed in Fort Collins was to do this dedicated 3-month training block before I went to Lander and then to Brazil. And I've had to really adjust that. And so that's been a little tough, but I'm doing what I can. So,
did you ever get like imaging or an official diagnosis on it?
Yeah, I did have to get an x-ray, and I do have an avulsion on my MCP joint. And so that could potentially be playing into the trigger finger. Because that's essentially what I'm dealing with is when I go into full flexion and then open it up, it's catching. So it is getting better. I'm just having to be patient and having to reduce my volume by a lot.
Is it impacting your strength other than pain?
It's hard to say because I ended up taking 2 weeks off last week, which I was sick all week, which I was fine with. And that was good because then I completely laid off it. But even grabbing like dumbbells was out of the question. So I bought this strap that has this like hook on it, mainly for like dumbbell rows. And then, I moved. So there were some days I just trained the left side. And I've been going to war with my squat, which has been good. So I don't think there's a ton of loss of strength there. I did start bouldering on Saturday, so I've gotten in 2 days of bouldering, and I'm definitely not where I want to be, but I don't think I'm too far off. So
Yeah, I feel like that's the kind of thing that's always so like hit or miss. It's almost like your perspective going into and out of an injury impacts your recovery more than your rehab.
for sure. What's been interesting about this one is how much all day I'm getting that constant feedback loop that I'm injured, because I mean, think of how many times you squeeze your hand. And so that's been challenging. It was kind of a game changer. I got a splint that I sleep with, and that is really helping. So yeah, I'm just right now, like coming back, I feel quite good because I've stayed with my strength training and everything. And now it's just like, like the other day I went in and climbed like 13 boulders, and it's like, that's it. Like, that's all you get. And so that's tough when I'm used to doing so much more.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sarah, how's training for the red? I heard a rumor you're going to the red soon.
Yeah, we've had a real winter here in the Northeast, so I've actually been able to just dedicate myself to 3 months of training since the last time I climbed outside in November. And yeah, I've just been very focused on getting ready for the red. So I've been doing lots of on the minute type work. And spending a lot of time on my rowing, my flashboard rowing machine to hopefully hit the ground running there. I have a month down there, so I can get some fitness while I'm there. But I'm really hoping to just adapt right away to it, see what happens.
That makes sense. Are you climbing at a gym, or are you mainly training on a woody, or what does the climbing portion look like?
I go to the gym like once a week. I have a mini moon board in my garage, so I spend a lot of time on there, which is actually really good for on the minute work because it's so short. um, but yeah, I haven't. I've done a few routes here and there, and it feels okay. But I haven't spent much time on routes.
Makes sense. Yeah, I feel like the red is so much. It's like almost the skill of being on the wall that long, as much as it is like the fitness.
Hmm.
Like if you know how to rest and shake out and crawl into the hole on Shiva and like lay there without your hands, like you know how to do those shenanigans. It's a different sport than if you show up like fit without those skills.
Yeah, yeah. The one thing I think I'm gonna need to adjust to is just like hanging on that jug and trusting that it's coming back. Because I haven't done that all winter, so that'll be an adjustment.
Yeah. And you've done it before, so you'll get it
Hmm.
back in like three climbing days.
Yeah, yeah. It should come back right away.
Having a month is huge.
Yeah, a month is a long time. You get a full week to just do whatever and get settle into a project and hopefully send some things.
When are you driving down?
I think I'm leaving in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have plenty of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my climbing and training, I don't know if y'all know this, but I have a child on the way. And so I've been calling my current training block like Operation Dad Bod in my journal. Um and so my goal for basically like 2026 is to get as jacked as possible or like as strong as possible in climbing and non-climbing ways. So I have been playing around with like the early 2000s 5-3-1 lifting scheme, and I just finished like the first block of it. So I'm like in week 4 of 9, and it's like 3-week blocks. And it is the highest volume lifting I may have ever done. It's so much volume. Like I substituted flat bench for weighted pull-ups, which is fine. It's a lot of volume of weighted pull-ups. Like today, I think it was 6 warm-up sets of 5 reps and then 5 by 5. And like at like the top set was like, I don't know, 90 pounds or something, and then 5 by 5 at like 65 pounds. It's like a lot of volume. And so I've had to like really focus on making sure I'm not going to overuse or hurt myself with the pull-ups. And then so I've been doing a lot of pressing, a lot of like forearm accessory stuff, and then just not forcing it if I can't finish a rep. But the cool thing is I'm like the volume's really high, and I've been like 1 or 2 reps or even right at failure in all the exercises like every session. And I've just stayed there even though the numbers are changing. It's not quite that beginner linear progress. It's doing its job as like an intermediate periodization process, but it's really got me excited to play around with other high volume stuff. Like I really just don't do much volume in anything, like my climbing, my finger training, my lifting. So it's fun to play around a little bit with like um and then like climbing wise, I've just been like maintaining, having like a couple board sessions a week. I like once a week I try to do all the boulders on a set. So because I work at all the different gyms in the area, or almost all the gyms in the area, there's like new sets every day, every week. And so I've been like trying to do all the boulders on those sets. Give myself like 5 goes max and just kind of like see what happens.
Nice. How many days a week are you lifting then?
I'm lifting Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So squat and pull-ups Mondays and Fridays because those are what I really wanted to improve on. And then deadlift and dumbbell vert press, like overhead press on Wednesdays. So I'm climbing Tuesday, Thursday, weekend. So like 3 days a week of climbing, which is enough to maintain. I'm not really concerned about it. And then on my climbing days, I'm doing like my normal like warm up and get my fingers firing and stuff. So it's pretty fatiguing though. Like I definitely am taking my rest days and like psyched that they're happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have y'all been following the Winter Olympics at all?
Oh, it's funny you said that because I have not. I watched the overtime of the women's. I saw the brief overtime of the women's hockey game yesterday, and that is about it.
That was a crazy match.
Yeah,
I watched about the same amount, like the last 90 seconds.
Yeah, I get way more into the Summer Olympics for some reason. So,
for sure. What about you, Sarah? Have you been following it at all?
I haven't watched anything, but I've kind of been checking in with a couple things here and there, but not very much.
Makes sense. I've been like weirdly obsessed with it. I feel like when I was a kid, I was really into the idea of ski racing and things. But this Winter Olympic cycle, I've been like weirdly into like biathlon, and some of the more like skimo is happening, and like the more endurance-y aspects of the sport. And I think that that's just partially like what I'm interested in now. And I just don't like watching like crazy crashes and things. But I've been, yeah, like haven't watched any curling, haven't watched any ski jumping. The stuff I was into as a kid, less so, but I've watched, I think every, or at least like passively participated in watching like almost every biathlon event and a lot of the cross country skiing events. It's been really, really cool. It makes sense why those people have some of the highest VO2 maxes ever recorded because they're racing every other day at like high output. Heck yeah, y'all. You ready for the big part?
well, before we do that, I would love to get your take, Carter, on Open Nationals because and Sarah's yours too. If you watched it, I kind of knew this day was coming where the younger generation was going to show up, and we are there. I think if I tallied it up right, 50% of the competitors were either age 20 or under, and then I think there was 2 15-year-olds in it and 3 17-year-olds in it. And a lot of these kids I remember from my youth days. So yeah, I was just curious what you guys thought of it.
Yeah, I think the age thing's really interesting because I feel like I've been thinking like, oh, climbing's turning into gymnastics and the best climbers in the world are 15. And then those 15-year-olds turn 20 and 25 and 30 and they're just getting better. You're like, Zach Galla's on one. Drew Ruana has been the best boulderer in Colorado for like 5 years. I think what it really is like the early intervention, so to speak, of like better coaching and better training practices and better facilities and access to like a wider population base and like more diverse humans so that the sport can kind of select for athletes. And I think like we'll find out that the sport will select for an age, just like certain sports do. But it's really interesting because every year it's like a few more people in that like 15 to 18-year-old range. And then it's just like getting more and more and more that way. But there are the old guard athletes who are hanging on, especially in sport. Like I think sport and speed, oddly speed, are like still selecting for like a little bit more experience. Whereas bouldering is shifting a little bit younger, but it's really interesting. I've been fascinated by just like how good these kids are.
Yeah. Yeah. So fun to watch.
All right. So, for today's what I call the nerd topic. So, in Outside the Vacuum, the nerd topic is basically like we deep dive into one idea. So Steve and I spoke last month about squatting and just learning about like the way we apply it, the way that we use it for different populations, all of those things. Today's nerd topic is a little bit different. So I thought it would be really cool for the two of you all to coach a hypothetical athlete that I've created. I haven't come up with a name for this athlete, but I don't know, we might come up with one at some point. So I'll kind of give you a little bit of information about them. And then really what I'm interested in is like, what things would you want to learn about this athlete? What are some of the like training interventions, or like it can be as nitty gritty as like how many sets and reps of an exercise you're going to give them, or it can be as general as like we're going to do a strength cycle, that type of thing. So a little bit about this athlete. We have a 28-year-old female climber who's a former team kid from back in the day. So she's been climbing since she was 12 years old. So that's 16 years of rock climbing under her belt. So she was a team kid back in like the early 2000s. So has been around, we say for a while, but like in the team kid zone a while, but like we're all way older than that. This athlete currently climbs around V8 and like 12 plus, like 12C, 12D on lead. Her personal records she didn't put in this hypothetical athlete didn't put hypothetical personal records in the document, but I can get them for you if you would like. But she peaked in college and then has gone back to school and is in law school full time. She has a trip to Wild Iris in Lander coming up in July, and she'll be there for about a month. And then she lives in the greater Washington, D.C., like DMV area. So there's a lot of gym options available, but she mainly trains at Sport Rock. So that's the information we have. But like right off the bat, what are some of y'all's thoughts about this?
Well, my first question would be, has she been to Wild Iris before, or to say any area, limestone area in maybe Wyoming? Kind of looking for how much history does she have climbing on pockets?
So she has not been to Wild Iris, but she has been to Potrero, which is limestone, and some other pockety places like the Red. But like we all know, like the Red kind of similar vibe, but it's much deeper and wider holds. But she has climbed in Potrero several times, like several winters.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I'm just wondering what her like how those trips to Potrero and the Red were for her.
I think the Red has been mainly like vacation climbing, so to speak, so that like just go out, see what you can do in a couple of goes. She hasn't really sent anything harder than maybe like 13A at the Red. And when she does climb harder at the Red, it's definitely the boulderier stuff like Maisie May, that type of thing. And then like links, but no sends on things like Golden Boy. So those really punchy, short, friendly routes. In Potrero, true like winter destination of just like go climb 20 pitch 510s, have a romp, have some margaritas at the end of the day. She hasn't climbed anything harder than Yankee Clipper there. So I don't know if y'all know that route, but Yankee Clipper's like, I think it's like 15 pitches up to like 511. And then there's like a 12A, like vert tech crimp thing at the top.
Any history with finger injuries?
No, oddly, no finger injury history,
Not yet.
but I always call this the like the big like ellipses, like the dot dot dot. She said that like the reason she likes places like this are her wrists hurt when she grabs big holds. She's got that like just TFCC instability on like pinches and slopers and things. And just the traditional, like, I mean, y'all know there's athletes that just have like super winged out shoulder blades. They just really, really get in the box and maybe have like tweaky shoulders, but not necessarily like injured.
What are her goals for this trip to Wild Iris?
that's one of the big questions that she's not sure about. So part of the reason she reached out to you all as coaches is you have been there. So that's one of the things she wanted to know was like not only how to train, but like what are some of the things to maybe get on there. So yeah, that's one of the trickier things about working with some of these athletes.
I think it's a good thing she doesn't have any goals, because I think if I were coaching her, I would want to check in with her, maybe after 3 or 4 climbing days and just see how it's going, and then go off that. Um, because I think that's one thing people sometimes run into when they come to Wild Iris is it sometimes can slap people in the face, and being flexible in what you want to go at, I think, is huge. So
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
So I'd want her to elaborate then on her wrist issues, what she's done about them, and kind of like the history of that, and also then I'd want to dig into those tweaky shoulders.
For sure. So a little bit about the wrist issues. She climbs with tape on her wrists. So she does the sort of like TFCC stabilizing, just like big old strip of Metolius tape when she climbs, and really has just avoided holds and moves that aggravate it. So she, I would say, defines herself as the queen of vert crimping. She's really good at those uh just like crimp and foot chips type moves. She doesn't climb a lot on the kilter board because those bigger, almost wristier holds are a little bit funky, but um, doesn't do a lot of like wrist curls or off the wall stuff for her wrists. Um, and then her shoulders, she is strong. She can do a one arm lock off. She's pretty strong in her arms and shoulders and back, but finds that like sort of the like, top and front of her shoulder gets achy after a hard bouldering session. Sometimes she finds that like really hard stretched out Gaston moves or really big like dynamic snatches where you're like, hitting a hold and trying to not sag out, like those moves sometimes she feels tension in her shoulder.
What other strength training has she done?
When she was on the team as a kid, she did just the early 2000s team kid stuff. So lots of push-ups, lots of pull-ups, lots of climbing. That's about it. She went through a period of time, college and shortly after college, where she kind of left climbing a little bit and just did normal, just going to the gym, using the machines at Planet Fitness and everything. But right now she just does like body weight pull-ups for the most part. She does some like pistol squats, and then she does some push-ups. But those are really just sort of at the end of every session.
So one of the things I think is really important. I have all my athletes who travel to Wyoming in the summers, and we start this in like January, is longer duration pocket hangs, mainly to keep for like safety. So that is something that I would definitely want to incorporate right away. And I think, front team, middle team, monos, especially if she's climbing at the 12 plus grade, then definitely training the mono. I think back 3 can be pretty important at Wild Iris as well, but starting that as soon as possible, because we want a nice slow build into July with that. And I think that could be something that would be coupled well with the shoulder. I think is a little concerning for probably both Sara and I. And so I think that could almost be a session in itself, is like protecting, because when you said that she sometimes will hit a hold or deep lock offs hurt her shoulder, like you're going to be popping the holds, you're going to be locking off at Wild Iris. And so I think between the duration hangs and some shoulder strengthening, just to keep her safe, is a must in the program.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think just for the listeners, part of the reason that we like those longer duration hangs or like some people call them density hangs, is it really allows for the like soft tissues to adapt to the positions you're putting them in and can even act as a protective stimulus. That's how you do a rehab, right? Is those long duration hangs to kind of like build up durability for the positions that we can then strengthen in. Um, I also forgot to mention this athlete is 5'8", like 5 feet 8 inches, which I'm not even going to try to do metric. We have 0 listeners from outside of the US at the moment. But maybe in the future we'll start doing metric too. She's 5'8" and doesn't know how much she weighs, but when she weighed herself several years ago, it was somewhere around 130 pounds.
You also said that she's good at vertical terrain. I think that's something that gets lost when talking about wild iris. Like it for the most part is vert climbing to roofs or roofs to vert climbing. Yeah, there's outliers like the rodeo wave, but having the ability to stand on your feet, I think, is really important, which then always brings me to the topic of what shoes to bring. Another thing I don't think people think about when they go to Wild Iris, you want a shoe that you can stand on and that will have more of a pointier toe to get in those pockets. So it sounds like, it sounds like she excels at that stuff, which is going to be huge. And at 5'8", like that's not short, which is also going to be beneficial. The other thing with Wild Iris is that it's a lot of tracking, a lot of hand foot matching in pockets. And there's often not other options for foot or hand holds, and I think sometimes the shorter climbers can struggle with that.
For sure. Sarah and Ken, what are some of the, just to kind of like wrap up the shoe choice thing, what are some of the either like general vibes or like specific models that y'all have really found success in places like Lander?
I would say the solution. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Sarah.
I was gonna say Solutions. Pretty good all arounder in general.
Yep, Solution's a go-to. I also like the Solution comp. I tend to like a little softer shoe. And then, if I personally like an even softer shoe for the rodeo wave as well then. So, but I think the Solution would be a good shoe. An Instinct VSR or an Instinct, I think would be a really good shoe. So
That makes sense. Sarah, have you used the comps versus the regular Solutions before?
I use both. I use the regulars more for routes and the comps for bouldering. Just I don't really know why. I just I feel like I wear out shoes faster on routes, so I like a slightly harder shoe to last a little bit longer. Whereas I'm okay with sacrificing the rubber for the boulders more.
So your athlete is also interested in knowing like what a good week of training is. So she is currently going to the gym 4 to 6 nights per week, climbing for like 2 or 3 hours, doing some body weight movements at the end of the session, and then going home. She doesn't have a lot of structure in those sessions, but said that she warms up a little bit just by climbing easier moves, tries to find like progressively smaller holds, progressively bigger moves, that type of thing. And then usually kind of like locks in on some of the newer commercial sets and kind of does the like, oh, there's a new set today. Let me just go try some of these boulders. Unless it's one of the really steep sets. And then she said she usually goes to the moon board.
okay, so she does have access to a moon board.
Mm-hmm.
Any other boards? You had mentioned kilter.
Ooh, I didn't plan this far ahead. Let's say she has access to them, but hasn't really climbed on them. What did you ask, Sarah?
You said 4 to 6 days she goes to the gym?
Yeah, 4 to 6 nights per week.
Does she know any of the route setters? And the reason I ask is the density hangs are a must. That's for safety. But it's very different hanging on pockets or picking something up with a pocket versus climbing on pockets. And so even if it's a few boulders or a route or two, like I think you got to maximize your time on pockets if she can. Now, if she can't, it is what it is. But sometimes just asking the route setters, hey, can we get a few boulders with some 2-finger pockets on it? I do think that goes a long way.
I've had people do like more like moderate grade boulders, climbing them with 2 fingers or 1 finger or something, to kind of, if there's not pockets in the gym, to get a little bit more acclimated to that.
Mm-hmm. She does not know many of the route setters, but the moon board is the 2016, which does have some pockets.
It does, yeah. And I think the moon board translates quite well to Wild Iris, because oftentimes at Wild Iris you just get weird, whether it's like a 2-finger crimp or it's a pocket you got to scoop. So just kind of weird hold types.
Mm-hmm. Sarah, what do you think like a good training week for this athlete is? Like you asked about the 6 sessions per week. What do you think like a good, there's not like a right or wrong answer, but what would you say you would sort of urge her to do?
Cut down a couple days. Maybe like go for 3 days of climbing and possibly a fourth, but if she wanted to do more days to make them more, I don't know, have a strength day in there instead, and get a little bit more rest and keep those sessions a little bit shorter.
So not 4 to 6 days of like at least 2 hours.
No.
How powerful is she?
She says she's not powerful, but she does climb V5 on the old school moon board and like V8 on the commercial stuff. But she doesn't really like dyno. Like she says she doesn't really like new school dynos and stuff. But people say that she has a lot of strength, but maybe not as much power.
Okay. And so that's something I would want to start to address too. I think in the warm up, like a 1-legged drill would be really good, where she's really having to generate. Oftentimes at Wild Iris, it's you're just in these weird positions. You're super spread out and you're on one foot and you have to generate power. And so starting it with some 1-legged climbing, campusing gym boulders might be good for her. And then maybe a little work on the campus board, mainly for the dead pointing, because dead pointing like we got to get her decent at dead pointing, because then you put in that layer of dead pointing into a pocket and that becomes challenging as well. So I think power should be addressed, maybe to start in the warm up, and then maybe some off the wall power stuff. And then as that trip gets closer, you could kind of merge those and then maybe have it a little more on the wall power as well, which could easily just be like a moonboard session or an on the minute type session. So, but being able to generate power in weird positions is pretty important there.
I fully agree. I think it's one thing to have power and it's another thing to apply it on the wall. I think the skill and like application of that stuff is why, like, it's really what like separates like the pretty good from like the really good in that style. So we've got kind of like a loose plan. So probably like 1 or 2 days of lifting per week, maybe, and then dialing in some climbing sessions. What do you all think like the climbing session specifically should look like? Like maybe what are some warm up things? I don't know. What is the framework?
I'd get her on a standardized warm up right away, and I'd be warming up those wrists, trying to do like the 4-way isometric kind of things, or Something else just to get those moving, but get her on a hangboard a little bit for warm up, and then just some other basic movements before every session.
Yeah, and then I would throw in when she's on the wall, I would throw in the one-legged climbing to kind of start being able to generate in those kind of awkward positions. And that could be real short, 3 to 4 boulders, maybe alternating each side.
And then y'all were saying maybe 2 to 4 climbing sessions instead of 4 to 6 per week. So she could still go to the gym. She just might be lifting on those other 2 days. But what would you say, like, should those sessions all look pretty much the same? Should one of them be different?
I think they'd vary as we got closer to the trip. Generally speaking, I'd probably have her a little bit more doing some volume work early on, and then increase the intensity and power of it as we get closer.
One session I would want to throw in as we get closer as well is like the art of the second go send. On sighting at Wild Iris is quite challenging, to the point where maybe I would have that conversation. Do we even want to entertain that, or do we want to focus more on second go sends, because it is super sequential? I don't know. So many times at Wild Iris, I've gone up a route the first time and was like, "Oh my god, this is going to take some work," and then I did it the next go. And so maybe incorporating some of that, especially she's got good route gyms out there. Really perfecting that style or like that ability to go up something, learn everything, lower down, and then do it.
Yeah, I agree. I think like that is, I think another example of like application, learning to say like, okay, I did the move this way. I'm just going to do the move this way, rather than always needing to dial it in or suss out the movement in like a truly projecting way. But it could also be like a Trappist, because then you get into playing too much jazz and you're not actually dialing in moves on something that's like really limits. So she does have law school. That's one thing that I kind of blew past that I didn't fully mention, but
How is she climbing 6 days a week and going to law school?
it's hypothetical.
Who is this person?
So she goes to the study / class from about 8 until 4, and then goes home for a little while, and then goes back to the gym. When she's at the gym, she's usually there from like 7 to 9, 7 to 10, something like that, kind of in the evening. Usually after she gets home from the gym, she just eats dinner and then goes to bed. She gets most of her like work stuff done at school, and then like work is included in the school, like TA, or I don't know, it's hypothetical. She's like a grad assistant or something. I don't know how law school works.
Well, we're taking 2 days away from her, so she should be fine. Because like I think, I mean, it just seems like at some point that might come to a screeching halt, and whether it's overtraining, burnt out, you name it, like that kind of feels like a screaming red flag.
Yeah, I would just want to be really like constantly checking in about her energy levels, how she's sleeping, and just to see if any of those red flags pop up, so we can change course so she doesn't get completely derailed for the trip or for law school. We don't want her to drop out of law school.
I was going to say the same thing. I think like when I think of this schedule, in addition to the overtraining, I sort of think of the journey to Red S as, it's like there are many steps before you get to that diagnosis. And I think like under fueling, under recovering, and overtraining are all sort of interrelated. And I'm seeing a lot of under recovering and overdoing it. Do y'all have any like tips that you generally give your athletes on ways that you can improve that jumble?
The eating thing is interesting to me because I've experienced this in some of my other athletes where I kind of have this cutoff where I would like to be done eating by a certain time because it does affect my sleep, and then I just feel it the next day. I just don't feel as good. So I think in her case, bringing take what she would maybe eat at 9:30, bringing it to the gym, and if she needs to space that out in her session, do that. But it's very individual, right? Like some people it doesn't affect. Where if that was me, I would want to bring my dinner to the gym and eat it and have it pretty much done by like 6:30 is kind of my cap.
Meal prep could be good for her. She can do that during one of her 6 sessions that we're getting rid of there, just to make sure she's eating enough throughout the week while she's got this busy schedule. And that could save up a little bit of time for her when she gets home from the gym to maybe unwind a little bit more and get some better sleep.
Sarah, I really like that idea. I feel like that sort of ties into like climbers are willing to suffer and do all the things that make you feel like an athlete, like go to the gym, drink water at the gym. And we forget that the stuff that really separates the elite athletes are like meal prepping and not being on their phone in bed and like these things that really like, add up to like, the athlete experience. And I think that this is one of the things that I really like about this longer form conversation is we get to really talk about the nuance of those things. That's why it's called Outside the Vacuum podcast, right?
The thing with Wild, like this whole her climbing 6 days a week and a law student, like that's concerning in the sense that we just need to have her arrive to Lander not injured and fresh because the climbing at Wild Iris is rowdy. And if you're in a massive state of fatigue, it is like even 510 there can be kind of rowdy. And so you need to be ready for that. And if she's in a massive hole or fatigued, oof, kind of scary.
For sure. So, all right, I'm going to play the magical time travel noise. I- all right, it is now May, like mid or late May. Semester's over. She's taking the summer off of law school. Training went well, probably like pretty good adherence. I think the biggest issues that y'all ran into was she wanted to do more. So she viewed the training plan as the floor, not the ceiling. When she was looking at the calendar that y'all would give her, and so her fatigue levels were higher than you would expect to see. But it's because she was doing things like staying a little longer at the gym or going out to the gym one extra day on the weekend because she has the day off, that type of thing. It's now May, so leaving in 5 weeks for the trip. And yeah, what do we do now? We've done some base building stuff. What are some of the concerns you've seen from the history working with this athlete so far?
I want to make sure, like, if she's coming in with fatigue, depending on how we structure deloads throughout the whole thing, I'd want to check in about her adherence to those deloads, and if she like didn't actually do a deload week, have a serious conversation about that and make sure we get one before this trip, maybe right before the trip or maybe right now, just to make sure she's gets some rest and then gets to feel what it feels like to be coming in fresh.
Because it sounds like were we asking her to climb a couple less days?
Let's say like 3 days, but she was really doing like 4, but the one on the weekend would sometimes go over on time or something.
Okay. Yeah, so having that conversation of, back to being able to arrive in Lander, healthy and somewhat fresh. So, I would want to find out exactly what she was doing on that extra day that we didn't have programmed. And having a conversation around why we didn't have that programmed.
So you have that conversation. She's like, I just felt like I could do more.
That's great. I mean, she was a youth kid.
Yeah.
Well, and then it's the conversation of like, okay, what are you actually doing on that day? Because it might be okay, if the intensity's not that high, if the volume's not that high, it might be okay. So, and then starting to have that chat, because like the other thing I would want to know is like, is she just going to climb at Wild Iris, or is she wanting to then venture out into some of these other areas around Lander, which I think it could potentially be a good thing to like, maybe it's a ratio for every 2 days at Wild Iris, go climb somewhere else just to give the pockets a little rest. Now you would want to have the chat of like, okay, we've been training for Wild Iris, so you can go to Wolf Point, but don't expect anything amazing, So
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. I also really like the conversation y'all just spoke about. Having the conversation about, okay, what are the negotiables and the non-negotiables? So are we training or are we working out? Like, do we just need those feel good chemicals in our brain because you're stressed from work and school and everything? In which case, we can do some stuff that's going to like get you a little bit tired and like kind of take the edge off a little bit. Or are we training for hard performance rock climbing?
how was her adherence to the density hangs?
Super good. She said it.
Okay.
Yeah. She said it just became a habit. It made her like wrists felt about the same, but it helped her shoulders. She felt a little more stable just from like getting engaged in her shoulders. And has been feeling a lot better on the aggressive boulders on the moon board.
Okay. Good. That makes me feel good about just her overall safety going out there. So
Yeah. She also climbed her first V7 on the moon board and has been climbing like on the weekend, has been climbing ropes, but nothing super dramatically different climbing ropes at the gym.
okay.
All right, magic time machine. She's leaving for the trip. Or maybe she's driving there. I don't know. It's hypothetical. Y'all are she's calling you while she's driving across Kansas. You got time. She's gonna have a chill climbing day tomorrow. They're just powering all the way to Wyoming and then climbing like maybe a half day tomorrow. What are some of the things that you would recommend this athlete do?
So one thing I would chat with her probably before she's driving out there, and this isn't a huge deal, but it does sometimes trip people up that there are certain elements that you sometimes have to deal with at Wild Iris. It is at elevation. She does not live at elevation. And then it could be like the most pleasant day ever, and that can turn in a heartbeat too. So just preparing her for it is at elevation, get ready to deal with the elements, take a look at the forecast. A lot of people go to the main wall at 10 a.m. and they sit in the sun until 5, and then they're just like wondering why they're so fatigued. So having a discussion about the different areas with her, and then urging her to ease into it those first couple days, just kind of see how things feel. Let me ask you this: how good is her attitude? And I wouldn't want to be like, oh, get ready, 510 is going to feel so hard. I would want her to go into it with an open mind, because sometimes people feel like it's not that different than other areas. But it is a rather unique area. And so just kind of laying that, like, let's go out, see how you feel, and then we can adjust expectations based off there.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that really reminds me of the to paraphrase the quote. It's like ships are safest at harbor, but that's not what they're for.
yeah, totally.
And like it's gonna be hard. Like we're not climbing because it's easy.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I love Wild Iris is you leave that place and you feel really, really strong.
Or injured.
I've gone, yeah. Or if you don't get injured, you feel really, really good. And I've noticed that whether it's I then go route climbing or bouldering, I just feel really, really good.
This was great. We should maybe next time I have y'all on, the podcast, we can sort of do the in the moment check-ins or more of a retrospective check-in on this or another hypothetical scenario. I think that would be fun. I feel like the real coaching is when they call you on the third day of the trip and it's like everything's falling apart.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. What happens on that first day? She blows a finger.
Go to
I'm not even
rifle.
a real person, and I'm like, I need to knock on wood. So the next section of our podcast, because we're slowly moving towards the end of our time, is I asked you all to come with a piece of media that's not necessarily climbing related that you've been into lately. That's whether it's a podcast or a book, a movie, an album, something that you feel like you've been just like really into lately. Sarah, do you want to go first?
The last like really good training book I came across was is the latest book from this guy Dan Cleather. He's a strength and conditioning guy out of the UK, called The Practice of Change. And I've read a couple of his books, and this one I enjoyed the most, I think, because I don't know, just maybe really hit on where I'm at in life, or with training and stuff. But he was getting into how like training is a dance, in a way, where you're like if you're working between a coach and an athlete working together, and the athlete themselves trying to regulate the work they're putting in versus their recovery, and just like, I don't know, it was like poetic in a way, the way he wrote it down. Like you could probably open to any page and you'll come up with like a motivational type quote about training. But he just really hits on like how the relationships are really important in training, like the consistency and just being patient with training. Like, just do a couple more sessions of this and the magic will start to happen at that point. You just have to stick with it, even if you don't think that it's actually working for you. So that was a pretty great book to read. And I think it's something that I could pick up and read again and get just a lot more out of, just because he kind of is chock full of kind of good stuff. So,
all right, Ken, what have you been into lately?
Well, what I've been into non-climbing related is college basketball right now, both men's and women's, probably more so on the women's side. I got really into women's college sports a few years ago, or college basketball, because I'm originally from Iowa, so huge Caitlin Clark fan. And I still watch a ton of just regular sports. I grew up playing sports, and so I really like this time of year as the season's winding down, and they're getting ready for March Madness on both ends. So I've been watching a ton of college basketball. Training related, I finally broke down and bought this bad boy.
nice.
And my goodness, this thing is meaty. I can only get through a few pages a day, and like, I'm highlighting, I'm taking notes, a lot of text to Steve, like, I don't get this. So, but I'm psyched. I'm diving in it. It is, I mean, it feels like a textbook, but there's a lot of really, like, I'm pretty excited on it. So that has been kind of consuming me. So, and then every morning I do read a chapter from Poison, Mark Twait's book, which I just absolutely love. I just like read through it one chapter at a time, and then just literally the next, like the last day, I just start over again. So, and then I have this interest, like how I often read books like several times. And so the first time I read through a book, I'll highlight with yellow. The second time is orange, and then blue. And so it's kind of cool to like go through a book that I've gone through like 4 or 5 times and like, oh, that's interesting. The first time I read this, I thought this was really important. And then the second time I read this, and it's just kind of a cool way to go back and look at like what caught my attention, 3 years ago versus now. So.
For the people who didn't see him hold up the book, he's reading Verkhochansky's Super Training.
Super Training, yeah. I had always wanted it. It's a rather expensive book, and actually, when we were in Ticino, Carter, Westside Barbell had a huge discount on it. I was like, all right, now is the time. And so I pulled the trigger on it. So
Heck yeah.
yeah,
It's hefty. It looks like a brick.
it's hefty. It is hefty. 500 some pages.
I really like that, like not just reading the books multiple times, but also like looking at things that are maybe what inspired the things that you're into right now. For example, I have been re-listening to Dr. Dre's album 2001, which I think the album is from like, what is it, 1999 or something? It's an old album. I also, this is not really media, but something I've been like oddly psyched on lately is for the listeners who don't know, I also run a competitive team here in North Carolina. I oversee Triangle Rock Club's like competitive and pre-competitive programming. And one of the coaches who works for me, his name is Ben. Shout out the Ben. He is studying for his CSCS and has basically created like a couple flashcards or like decks of flashcards and practice tests. And we've spent probably 20 hours in the car together driving to competitions over the last month and a half. And we've just been doing the flashcards while we're driving, and I'm really into it. It makes me want to study for the CSCS. I had no idea how important it was to know how far away the mirror is supposed to be from your squat rack, or like what is the staff to athlete ratio for 11-year-olds versus college students in a weight room. It's really fun, and it's sort of like trivia, but it feels like relevant.
That's cool.
All right, final thing. I have an anonymous question as well as a question from one of my Climb Strong athletes. And these questions are actually really related. So I'm just going to ask them both, and then we'll just see where the vibes take us. So the question from anonymous is, how do you set goals? I feel aimless lately, and I want to find inspiration from something, but don't know where to look. And then the question from Max, one of our athletes at Climb Strong, is when to change goals or objectives, knowing when to bail, when to dig deeper, when to keep a goal, or when it's time to cut the rope.
Well, for the first one, I guess I'd have some questions to ask to this person. Like what do they want? Like what do they want to achieve? In general, in climbing, I'm assuming it's more climbing related, or in the weight room. And yeah, just try to find something that they could improve on, or they're psyched to improve on, and just start to move in that direction a little bit.
Yeah. It's like, what do you want? And then branch out from there to get to it. The second question, I think, it's an interesting question, because sometimes you hear like, oh, spend X amount of sessions on the boulder or the route, and after that, then you need to walk away. And I really urge my athletes to check in on how psyched or how motivated they are to go out to the project. And the minute that starts to wane a little bit, to just go do something else for a few days. I really want, I think that isn't talked about enough. It's like the worst thing in the world is like feeling like, oh, back to the project, here we go again. I think you need to be motivated. You need to be psyched to go out to the project. And once that starts to dip a little bit, just, take a few days off from it, go climb some other boulders, let that naturally come back, and then go back. So I think that's a really important piece.
Yeah, I agree with both of those. I honestly also view it as, do you want to do the thing, or do you just want to have done it? Like, do you want to do this rock climb, or do you just want to say you did it? If you want to do it, then that means you want to do what it takes to do it. And it means that you're sort of psyched to go back and continue making progress and continue doing the things that are going to set you up for it. Thank y'all so much for spending your Friday evening with me on Zoom. I really appreciate your perspectives and your thoughts on all of these things, and for indulging me in essentially Dungeons and Dragons of rock climbing coaching. But yeah, I really appreciate having y'all on. And then if people have questions for you all or for me, they can always reach out to Climb Strong on Instagram or shoot us an email. Do y'all have any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
No, just thanks for taking this on, Carter. I think people have wanted us to do a podcast for a while, and I've admittedly have been against it, and just because there's just an influx of information, but I think it's awesome, and I really enjoyed the first episode. So thank you for kind of solely taking this on for the team.
Yeah, thanks, Carter.
Absolutely. Thank y'all. One day I'll get better at editing too. So hopefully we'll see. All right, y'all. I will catch you later. I'm going to stop the recording.